Tulisema tutatumikia hii country bila uoga, bila mapendeleo. This we witness these attempts by political actors to try and infiltrate and to influence our election officials. And sometimes I wonder what value. Kama umepiga kampeni yako vizuri, unajua wewe kabisa unajipiga kifua, you are going, you are popular. Why do you want to look for harass our presiding officers and returning officers? You want to secure an illegitimate victory. Then unasema you are a leader. And the manner in which you secured your victory is questionable. So there were those attempts, and I will not mince my words. So again, we have to do something about that. That desperation that makes people attempt the impossible. And it's high time political actors learn. Where's the chairman of PPLC? Yes, my friend in research. Train your people that to steal elections in this country is an impossibility. Security. Because without security, we will not have had the by-elections conducted successfully. You know, this country, we are also as a country going through some challenges. Of course, we know the challenges of youth and employment, all this, all that, crime. You know, we live in this country, we know every day what we are facing. And during political contestations, we've had situations where tensions rise. We have had situations where contestants sometimes treat one another as enemies. And therefore they have to fight against each other. And what is unfortunate sometimes is that instead of this contestation turning into a battle of ideas, of policies and strategies, sometimes it ends up being physical. And in the midst of all that, you have young people who are then recruited as gangs, goons, and hecklers, and who are deployed to do all manner of things that disrupt elections. During these by-elections, I was the first under my leadership with my new team. Sadly, we also witnessed incidences where there were cases of violence, intimidation, and harassment. And without our security, without our police service, we would not have had elections in some of the electoral areas. That's the truth. So I am honored to have the Inspector General here with the DCI and their teams. Please let us give them a round of applause. They did support us. They did help us with intelligence to diffuse some of the things that could have been difficult. They helped us to talk to some of the protagonists. They helped us to arrest some of the perpetrators of violence. So they did their job as patriotic citizens in this country. So thank you, IG, with your team for the effort. So as you can see, election, sio kazi ya Iebc peke yake. Sio si. Are we in agreement?
Yes.
All of you seated here are part of the electoral ecosystem. You are part and parcel of elections. You are part and parcel of democracy in this country. And for us to make democracy work in Kenya, for us to entrench democracy in Kenya, we need to cooperate. We need to work together as critical players and actors who are given responsibility. Whether you are an observer, whether you're in security, whether you're a political party, an independent candidate, whether you're in the media, you have a role. And therefore, that is the context within which we have invited you here today to share with you what we thought worked and what did not work, and therefore what can be done. That is because we as the new Iebc, we are committed to ensuring that the democracy of Kenya is resilient and is strengthened. And therefore, we remain committed to transparency, accountability, and upholding the sovereign will of the Kenyan people. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, and dear colleagues, let us reaffirm our collective responsibility in safeguarding the integrity of Kenya's democracy. It is one of those democracies that is admired globally, and it is therefore our responsibility to guard it and to protect it at all costs. Just for the purposes of updates, we conducted 22 by-elections on the 27th of November 2025. We had one seat for Senate for Baringo. Then we had 6 for constituencies and several others in the wards at the ward level. And I'm sure by now you know all the areas. I don't need to mention that. We also need to brief you that we did not have elections in Tembelium and Medicaid wards because they were unopposed. And as the law is, if there is no contestant, then we declare that as a no contest, and therefore you will not have any election in that ward or that electoral area. We also wish to brief the public, the people of Kenya, that we deployed technology during these elections. As you know, Kenya pioneered the use of technology way back in 2013. We went through it again. We used technology in 2017 and in 2022. So during these by-elections, we deployed technology. We used the Kenya Integrated Election Management System. We also conducted, of course, voter registration, which in other parts of the Republic, but those parts that were having by-elections, we did not conduct voter registration because the law requires that we freeze the register until after the by-elections. And we would like to report that our technology worked 99%. And I'm sure some of the colleagues who are in the field, as far as Banisa, where we had a constituency by-election, Commissioner Noor Azam can confirm that in Banisa, the King's Kit worked 100% in identifying the voters. So, of course, as usual, our election calendar starts with pre-election preparations to the actual voting day, and of course the declaration of results. So for this by-elections, the experience we learned is that we had to recruit over 12,000 poll officials. That is where most of our budget goes. We were allocated a budget of 798 million, which enabled us to ensure operational readiness, recruitment of poll officials, procurement of election materials, training, transport, logistics, and of course voter education and stakeholder engagement throughout this process. So that's quite a substantial amount. And a lot of effort, recruiting all officials, returning officers, training them, and deploying them and transporting materials to the respective polling centers. That is a lot of work. Which is why sometimes when we are faced with some skirmishes and fracas during the polling day, when you hear political pundits talking about Iebc should call off that election, Iebc should do that, you just wonder, why would we then spent so much money to recruit, to deploy, to procure materials, to transport, to set up the polling stations. And then we call off that election because one or two candidates have decided to mobilize guns and fight each other, sometimes outside even the polling stations. So we need to think about that. In terms of district resolution, I know during election a lot of things happen that I think Kenyans need to understand. We just don't wake up and carry the ballot, the empty ballot box and the ballot papers to some place in Banisa and set it up, and then we call you to come and vote and go, then count and give you this. So no, a lot of work, a lot of technical work takes place. Besides recruitment and the training of our officers, we also have to deal with the issue of nominations of candidates, including independent ones. Mr. I think we handled, we processed with the other colleagues. So political parties will bring in, after their party primaries, they will bring in their candidates, the ones they have nominated. Then we go through a process called candidate registration. So, and we have a system, a technological system, a digital system, a digital platform, where we now register those candidates. We clear them, we check. We check your ID, even maybe sometimes even birth certificate. We check the Chapter 6 clearance documents, including from EACC. I'm sure EACC, they are here. There are certain documents that you have to bring, CRB, you have to bring KRA, you know the usual. You live in this country. You know all those documents that you are required. So you submit to our returning officers, and then there's a vetting committee there under the leadership of the returning officer. So, and it's so I personally witnessed the vetting process, the candidate registration process for Baringo. And most of our colleagues, the commissioners, went to different constituencies to check the manner in which our returning officers were clearing candidates. Professor went to Bear and witnessed that process. Now, when later on you hear sections of the social media awash with all these stories about some candidate in Bear North being cleared, I don't know, without pleas, or there was a letter from EACC and all that, you just wonder what's happening here. Because the law requires, we can only disqualify somebody. Our returning officers who are seated here can disqualify somebody when somebody submits documents that are not proper, or if there's an objection. In this case, if there was an objection from any other act, you go to the returning officer. At that point of clearance, you object, and then your objection is recorded, is registered, and it's processed. If the RO dismisses you and you're not satisfied, you bring your complaint to something called the Dispute Resolution Committee, which is chaired by commissioners who are lawyers, and this sits as a judicial body to adjudicate. So during this by-election, we had 9 complaints arising from that process of registering candidates, and those candidates who felt they were unfairly treated, they brought their complaints to the Dispute Resolution Committee, which is handled by the commissioners themselves. And out of these, we resolved most of them, 6 of them, and 3 were escalated to the High Court. And again, even at the High Court, they were dismissed because we did our job so well. Congratulations to that committee. Round of applause to our Dispute Resolution Committee. So in future, instead of somebody complaining and bringing stories about the chairman receiving a phone call from where, bring your complaint to the returning officer at that point. For presidential 2027, I'll be waiting because I'm the returning officer for the presidential election. Don't wait outside and start circulating my picture and telling stories that are lies. Electoral code of conduct. Again, as we head towards the final voting day, the moment we gazette elections, we constitute something called Electoral Code of Conduct Enforcement Committee. This is again a committee that is grounded in law. There have been litigations around this committee all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has confirmed that decisions taken by these committees are binding. So this committee this time round did a lot of work. And you remember the situation in Kasipul, which was getting out of hand. There was incidences of, when we clear you, you sit down as those candidates who have received the certificate to contest now. If we allow you to sit down with our returning officer, we agree on the campaign schedule. Once that is done, you must follow that campaign schedule. In Kasipul, these guys decided they are not going to follow the campaign schedule. And they ended up meeting in some place where they were not supposed to be, and their supporters clashed. And that resulted to 2 deaths and a number of injuries. So when that matter was brought to our attention, again through a petition, we were able to place that matter before the Electoral Code of Conduct Enforcement Committee, which is chaired by Commissioner Dr. Talala. They looked at the complaints, we summoned all those people, they gave evidence, and it's on the basis of evidence that we arrived at a fine of 1 million to each of those contestants who were accused. So the reason why I'm speaking about this particular case is that most often you hear out there complaints, again, all this misinformation, disinformation about IEBC not doing this, IEBC not doing that. We are a country that is governed by the rule of law. And in a situation where we have to follow the rule of law, there must be something called due process. When there is an issue somewhere, like has happened in Kasipul, people must report to IEBC. You have to bring to us. We have to know who is the complainant. What are you complaining about? Against who? When and how? Then therefore, what remedies are you seeking? That's how we work. That's how we normally approach it in our courts. So for those cases that were brought to us by way of complaint or petition, we dealt with them within how many days? Actually 2 days. That the Kasipul issue we resolved within 2 days. But then we did not receive any other. But outside there, and some people sit around some corner and say, IEBC did not do this, IEBC did not do that. We can't possibly be running an election, managing a polling station, materials, all that, at the same time going out there and looking for trouble for us to resolve. So as responsible citizens, let us be vigilant, let us, our eyes wide open, let us assist IEBC to do its work. We have all these committees, they can take action against whoever is undermining the integrity of the election process. So generally, campaigns were largely orderly, except for those few instances, and those isolated instances that were reported in some cases. Of course, some were reported with exaggeration, but they were there and they were dealt with. So we promised ourselves when we were coming to take up this duty as the new commissioners that we will ensure a rights-based approach to elections. Those of you who are working in the human rights field, where I started my career many years ago, will bear me witness that during these by-elections, we took that inclusive approach and we made arrangements for elderly, expectant mothers, and persons living with disability to ensure that They voted seamlessly and smoothly without any hindrance. In the evening of 27, when the polling closed, I issued a statement about the next steps. Tally. We knew there would be contestation. We knew from the polling stations now, the battle will move to the tallying centers. We did secure the tallying centers thanks to the security service, and the results, the tallying and the transmission were orderly. The results were publicly displayed in all the areas that are supposed to be, and we uploaded all the results forms in that public results portal. And Kenyans who cared, Kenyans who are following keenly, were able to access those results in a timely manner. So as I said, the security minimized incidences of disruption, and generally the exercise went on smoothly. Of course, we as Iebc also suffered some incidents in the course of those incidences in places like Mbere North, Kasipul, Narok Town, Kabuchai, Twele, Malaba, Nantiongo, Pekerenyo, and Fafi. There were incidences where our poll officials, our officers were assaulted. And we condemned these incidences of assault not only against our officers, but also against the general public. We also witnessed vandalism and destruction of election materials. All these incidences were reported, and I think they are being processed by the National Police. We had situations where some 6 polling stations were affected by this kind of incidences of assault and vandalism. Voter bribery and impersonation, we cannot bury our heads in the sand. These things happen, and something must be done about them. Interference by organized groups. We've spoken about that issue of mobilization of goons. And for this by-election, I don't know whether it will happen in the general election. We witnessed some people called super agents. We need to find a dictionary definition of super agents. What these super agents are. Yeah, we had super agents. Most of them were sitting members of parliament or senior politicians in opposition. And the challenge around this super agency business is that when these people show up in a small polling station in Nansiongo or Kerenyo, they overrun the polling station because they will come in accompanied by their so-called supporters, who is another category of super agents, but they are not the face of it. And we saw that had a very disruptive impact on the manner in which the polling was progressing. Because we opened our polling stations early in the morning at 6. By around 10, 11, when these super agents show up with their bunch of supporters, making noise and all that show of might and strength, then it disrupts the manner in which the peace around our polling station. So that's one of the things that we witnessed, and something must be done about it if this phenomenon will exist beyond the by-elections. So in terms of our successes, we'd like to extend our gratitude to Parliament and the National Treasury for giving us budget for the by-election, specifically. For 2027, that is still a matter that is pending. We hope they will extend the same spirit and commitment to funding the next general election on time, so that then, learning from this experience of the by-election, with adequate resources, early disbursements, we are able to procure our materials, we're able to recruit our staff, we're able to train them, and we're able to set up the polling stations. We also, of course, I talked about smooth candidate registration process. Ballots. I think for the first time in the history of this country, we saw ballot papers arriving and the manner in which it was being handled from the Jomo Kenyatta cargo terminal all the way to the security, to a very secure warehouse. And then from there, we deployed almost immediately without wasting time, because the last arrived on Wednesday. By Thursday, already they were moving out to the respective polling areas, and all that accompanied by the media, the agents, and all that. So we're going to continue to perfect that to ensure that transparency, so that even when some people are making allegations that Chairman Iebc is having ballot somewhere, I mean, I think the media and the people just looked at these people like, are you kidding us? Are you joking? Because the same pellets are sitting right there in front of the same person making those allegations. So instead of him waiting for that to be opened, then he makes these wild allegations. And I think there will be certain things in future, but it will help us as the media and as responsible citizens to dispel any kind of disinformation around that. Clean streets, technology works. So please support us as we improve on technology to make sure things are efficient and transparent. The public portal is actually supposed to be for verifiability, transparency and verifiability. I know there's a debate going on around this National Tallying Center and all that. And we have some cases that have gone to court. No problem. We welcome any step, any litigation that is aimed at improving things. If what we have is not sufficient enough, and there is something we can improve, this Iebc welcomes that. So, with time, I would really request our civil society, the political parties, to train, to educate Kenyans on the importance of that results button. When we upload the form from that polling stations, already signed by our presiding officer, your own political party agents or your independent candidate agent, and confirmed results are uploaded to the public portal. It's supposed to be a mechanism. You check the original form against what is in the portal, so that we ensure the results can be verified and it is a true reflection of the original. So make use of that. So, of course, as I conclude, we had challenges around voter apathy. Yes, so we need to ask ourselves as Kenyans, Iebc ndio shida ama iko shida mahali ingine? Because the problem with this country, everything Iebc. Even where political parties and their candidates scare the voters, then they blame Iebc. Even where sometimes we in the media also hate Iebc so hard and make it so bad, and citizens stay away from that bad Iebc, then you still come and blame the same Iebc. So we need as Kenyans to think and reflect about what are we doing to democracy in our country. Are we building that democracy, or are we directly or indirectly undermining that democracy by whatever we say, whatever we do, and how we act? So what happened here is a big problem, and it did not start with these by-elections. Those of you who have been in this field long enough know. 2017, the voter turnout was 78.9%. 2022, the figures came down to 64.4%. So in percentage terms, a 10% gap translates to almost, if you do 22 million voters, that's how many? That's over 2 million. And mainly young people. They did not show up. Why? We need to ask ourselves. Kama ni Iebc ndio ilikuwa pia responsible, utasema tu. But there is a problem in this country with voter apathy. Then attempts by political actors to influence election officials. Tukisema tutatumikia hii country bila uoga, bila mapendeleo. This we witness these attempts by political actors to try and infiltrate and to influence our election officials. And sometimes I wonder, what value? Kama umepiga kampeni yako vizuri, unajua wewe kabisa unajipiga kifua, you are going, you are popular. Why do you want to look to harass our presiding officers and returning officers? You want to secure an illegitimate victory. Then unasema you are a leader. And the manner in which you secured your victory is questionable. So there were those attempts, and I will not mince my words. So again, we have to do something about that. That desperation that makes people attempt the impossible. And it's high time political actors learn. Where's the chairman of PPLC? Yes, my friend Misati. Train your people that to steal electoral in this country is an impossibility.